Thank you, and welcome back to Library Nocturne. This time it is truly a nightside chat, actually audio visual chat. And I'm very excited to talk about this episode of Black Mirror, this newest episode, this newest season. It is one of the newest episodes in the newest season. I think it's the third episode called Hotel Reverie. And it has Issa Rae and Emma Corrin, Nora Lum, unfortunately also known as Aquafina. Um, I can't think of anyone else I recognized immediately. There was the girl at the computer I don't recognize. I don't know her name, but I recognize her from something. Um, but yeah, I actually loved this episode. Um, I don't know if I've heard a lot about it, but I also haven't like looked per se. But it's just you think you would just naturally hear some fair and fair about this, because this is actually a beautiful story, and really unexpected, and I just loved every minute of it. And yeah, let's jump in. I Obviously lesbians breaking the time space continuum, like the plot of this episode is that Issa is an actress who is fed up with the roles that she's being offered. And along comes this opportunity to star in this new virtual alternate reality sort of projection into this movie that she already loves, Hotel Reverie, which is starring Emma Corwin as Dorothy Chambers, as Clara Rice LaShare. Does that make sense? Right? So Emma is playing an actress who lived in the 30s, who was actually the star of this movie, and spoiler alert, was suspected of being a lesbian. And yeah, so I mean, already, you know, the premise to me really stuck out because it's Black Mirror, so there's all this alternate virtual reality, all of these projections into the virtual space, your actual consciousness into the reality, not just putting on your goggles and seeing it, but literally sending your mind into a virtual uh, plane. And this takes it one ups the concept also right now, right, of AI and the deep fakes and all of these new issues around how it can alter virtual space and people's likenesses and their identities. So I think it's very timely in a way that I think it's been hard for Black Mirror, I'll say, because I mean, we live in a society and I think it has moved at light speed. Like, if you imagine the first episode of Black Mirror, I don't know, like the suspense and the, oh my gosh, disbelief, at how unbelievable still some of these things were. Now you fast forward and it's the seventh season, and it feels like they've, they had to really think outside the box to kind of stay ahead of the current reality, because I mean, we're living in a future, that's for certain. So yeah, I just really appreciate this episode because it was not as cynical of a take, honestly, as the situations we've been seeing in the public eye and in the news. And it's about lesbians. And for once, I, you know, will notice, right? It's interracial. It's black and white. So it is technically set in 1930. But I think it also is a really great perspective on what could our love look like for others if we could love in a vacuum and if we could exist in a vacuum, basically. I mean, it's a very intriguing premise because we know we don't live in a vacuum, right? We just like don't. I'm gonna pause. Okay, resume. So, yeah, I just would love to talk about this episode because, I mean, I think it was incredible, honestly, and I think everyone did an incredible job. I mean, honestly, this is a woman-led story. Um, I mean, most of the major characters are women. Of course, there's the guys, the tech guys, but they're so like background, you know. I mean, they're there, they serve a purpose, but they're not. And honestly, one of them messes up, so they're not even like the heroes of the story, like at all, at all, at all, at all, at all, at all. So I love that. So let's get started. Let's jump in. Ooh, are we jumping in? Jumping in, Mr. Krabs? Okay. So a couple points that I did want to highlight before I get started, just to keep in mind. This is obviously not a spoiler free. We're not. Oh, I mean, of course, I want to encourage you to see it, but I'm not necessarily. You know what I mean? Like I'm here to talk about it. So just a few points that I think kept coming up and that the episode really revolved around are a couple main ones, which is that Issa's character, Brandy Friday, yearns for gender freedom and I would say racial freedom too, via wanting to play a quote unquote traditionally male role as the romantic lead. Issa yearns for gender and I would say racial freedom via wanting to play a quote unquote traditionally male role as the romantic lead. Her character, Brandy Friday, is like looking for something. She really wants romance and she wants to escape the narrative boxes that she's being put in as a black woman. And the opportunity to play, well, she took that opportunity. She made that for herself. So I think that's important to note. Like, put a pin in there. That was a self made opportunity for actualization because she heard the role of um, Dr. Alex Palmer, which is traditionally a male role because it was the movie from the 30s. Um, she petitioned for the role and she got it. And because she was a big star, it was a helpful bonus for Nora's character trying to sell this technology of the Redream. So let's start there. And then I think Brandy's journey mirrors Dorothy slash Clara's journey because she was also looking and yearned and ultimately unfortunately didn't find freedom in expressing her sexuality and I'm sure her gender freedom, right? Our sexuality is, you know, has a lot to do with our gender as well, and how it's constructed, how we interact with it, which leads to the next point, which is all of this highlights the performative nature of gender, of desire, and the constructed nature of desire. And I would say race, and I put race with a little asterisk just because in this world, it's truly not meant to matter that Brandy slash Issa is black. Like they see her that way, but because she is truly filling in the role of Alex Palmer, she is fitting in that particular, cutout shape. They don't necessarily recognize her as a black woman. Now, we could talk about whether or not that's good or bad, I suppose, but it does take some of the weight of her race out of it, especially during a time when, I mean, the 1930s. I just like don't even have to say anything else. Like that's just Maybe if you had got your little movie in right at before the Hays Code, maybe, but probably by the time this was made, obviously Dorothy was having issues. Okay, so this is just, I think a lot of the scenes and how they interact with each other really disrupt what is expected, truly flips the script on gender roles, gender expectations, the expectations around sexuality, um you know yeah, because they see her, I would have to assume, as her. So Dorothy sees a black woman, but she just doesn't think anything of it. That's Alex Palmer, Dr. Alex Palmer. That doesn't, you know, um, I don't know. I think it just, yeah, it highlights a lot about how, if you're familiar with Judith Butler, how gender is constructed, it's performative. As RuPaul says, you're born a baby, everything else is drag. Um, and even how desire plays out, and the roles that come with that, and then how it's constructed. And I know, to me, performative could be wrapped up with performative, but I think there's still two parts, because the world has to be set up and then it has to be enacted. So I think it's kind of talking about both parts, about how this world is literally set up. I think the illustration is so cool. You have to watch the episode, where they're like building the diagram of this set virtually, and you can see, and it just literally builds, and then it populates, and then the people act. That is, to me, like the perfect, I mean, it's just a really smart way to talk about these things, I think, because it's like so hypey post meta almost. I don't even know. Like, um, so, you know, without much further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and jump in. So, let me just start by saying, so the episode actually opens with a reel to reel clip of this movie from the 1930s, Hotel Reverie. Has Emma Corwin in it, has the man Ralphie whoever who's playing Dr. Alex Palmer in the actual 1930s. So this is the actual 1930s movie they're showing us a trailer of. Then we are brought into an office with Nora, who's playing like a sort of, I don't even know what you would call her, just like she is the one trying to pitch the Redream technology to the head of this movie studio head, basically this historically vintage movie studio. She's pitching this technology where basically they could, in theory, get any A-list actor to revive their films at a major fraction of the cost through this Redream technology. And even the woman, keywords, she says, is it going to be a deep fake? One of those deep fake, AI over their face, and Nora's like, no, it's not going to be that. It's going to be, well, she doesn't actually explain. So let's start there. She doesn't actually explain how it works. She just says you're only going to need 93 minutes of their time. Here's the technology, and here how it works. So they explain to each other off camera. Um, and the keyword lady, she's in. So she's like, okay, they're like, which Ryan do we call first? So then this is when we cut to Issa, who, which, by the way, spoiler, they don't get either of the Ryans. They get Issa, who is playing Brandy Friday, an actress, contemporary actress, who is obviously discontent with the state of her life, as evidenced by these opening shots. So they open up with these, I thought, were really beautiful shots of um, Issa as Brandy by the pool, by her own pool at her house. Look at her, looking sullen, contemplative, sitting by the pool. Like, you could just tell from this frames that, like, she's thinking about her life and the state of her life, where it's going, where she's been. Like, I think this is a very familiar feeling to people, of just sitting and thinking, and maybe you need to stare at a body of water while you do it. And obviously she's very well off, she's successful, but she's not happy. Um, so they cut to, she's talking to her agent about, the opportunities that she would like, and honestly the lack thereof that she's experiencing. And she literally says, I am tired of being a noble victim or sidekick. Okay. So, you know, it's literally, she can, what she call it, Sundance misery porn. I was like, oh my goodness. If you can't even read, here's what it says. Raw portrait of despair, gut wrenchingly sad, left me devastated beyond heart wrenching. Girl, okay? So, I think this is pretty familiar to everybody at this point, right? Like, just I think now things are changing more, but there is still this, reluctance to invest in stories for black women that are unorthodox, and that, or seems unorthodox, let's say that, because I don't think they're actually unorthodox. I just think people think they're unorthodox because they don't think. So, you know she's really wanting to experience a freedom of artistic expression that she's not being allowed, and her agent is completely dismissive to her. Okay, he's like, I can't control what box they put you in. And she says, well, the T is, they're all the same box, which, is a very astute observation, is that these sides of the coin, although they may have different characteristics, they may look different, they may move different, they ultimately all do come from the same root of misrepresentation of black women. And, you know, it does. It makes you sick. It makes you discontent. It makes you frustrated. You just, especially if you're trying to achieve, or you're trying to get ahead in some way, whatever your career, whatever your field, or whatever it is, you know, it is about those negotiations you have to make, almost like on your personhood, and it's really heavy and it takes a toll. And I think her desire and her yearning for freedom in this part is just very relatable, actress or not. And so for her, she's saying, especially, she wants something that's romantic. She wants something that's timeless. She wears her Casablanca, and I think it's interesting because in this scene, when she says, I want something romantic, her agent says, well, what about this film? Film, 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 film. Like, what, this, you're playing like this, sidekick. He's, you know, and she's like, well, he's pursuing me. It's romantic for him because he's pursuing me. Why can't I pursue? And I thought that was a very interesting framing, that in her mind, romance for her is equated to her pursuing. Um, I can't say like what that means de facto, but I think personally, you know, I think of romance as a dance, takes two or more. I don't know your life. But so I don't necessarily equate like one person's pursuing, one person's being pursued per se. But I did think it was interesting that clearly there is some expectation of being the one who is being pursued that does not seem to accord with her. And to her, being romantic would actually be if she were able to pursue, which I think is very familiar, especially for, you know, lesbians, for women who love women, same gender loving women. Listen, you know what I'm saying? Um, of just wanting to interact with romance and dating and sexuality different, you know, um, and different than sometimes what you feel like you're allowed to do. So this was it, it really opened up. Like, I almost feel like with this episode, I had to really stay my hand to not like just try to show the episode and talk about it. Which, I mean, I could, but it's all just whatever. I'm not trying to do it all that. But that's ideally what this show, I feel like, at least this episode needs, because every moment almost was so laden with memory, with meaning, that it was like I can't just isolate one scene. I can't just isolate one line of the script. Like you gotta see the whole thing, you know. So, um, she's doing all this with her agent, and she brings up Hotel Reverie, and her agent's like, well, that's funny, this is the second time this has come up today. They're actually looking for someone to fill this role, Alex Palmer. And Brandy jumps at the opportunity. I mean, she literally jumps at the opportunity. She's like, I want to play this. She leaves no room for argument, honestly, and I loved it. And so, he's like, well, it's not the girl role, it's the male role. And she like, I literally don't care. So she makes a bid, and we are shown back at the movie studio with Nora and the keyword lady that they love it. They're like, Brandy Friday, whoa, okay, love it, great, bet that up. So, you know, Nora is like, this is actually genius. We could just put Brandy Friday in as Alex Palmer, and we don't have to try to change the role per se. Because it is written fairly like gender neutrally. Like nothing in what Issa is portraying, like with the original material, is actually technically like gendered or anything. You know what I'm saying? It's not like he walks in like, yes, hi, I'm a white man, and you know what I'm saying? It's not like she would have to be saying crazy stuff. So they can really just slide her in. So they love it. So she gets these materials, and this uh mail lady comes and delivers the materials, and she's like going on like, Brandy, I love your work, I love the guy that you were starring with, he was just so amazing, are you guys still together? And this obviously makes Brandy really uncomfortable. Like she really rushes. If you can like just look at the look on her face right now, like she's really rushing, and she really hits that mail lady with a, don't let the door hit you, with a good Lord split you. Like do not let the gate hit you on your way out. Because to me this mirrors already with Clara, right? Because there was a lot of talk when we see Issa watching some of the Hotel Reverie videos. She listens, one of them is like a newsreel about Dorothy Chambers' death, and that she had been hounded with gossip this whole time during her career. And part of it was related to the male co-star, because they were supposedly dating, but people were questioning if it was real, and what's going on with Dorothy, which I also think is funny because, I mean, I don't know if people know this by now, but a friend of Dorothy was a way to tell people you were part of the family. So I thought, like, of course, her name is Dorothy Chambers. And to me, also Wizard of Oz. Um, because, I mean, this is all about escaping into another world. She doesn't get to escape into a Technicolor world, which I think would have been nice. Give old Dorothy something good to chew on. But it is about escaping into another world, and ultimately coming face to face with yourself and taking control of your destiny. So very, very, just everything was so like meaningful, and I feel like it was done in a way that could have been ham-fisted and maybe even toes the line, but never quite takes the dip, because everyone is playing this so genuinely with the appropriate amount of sentimentality, in my opinion. So yeah, so she's uncomfortable with this question. And to be honest, don't come deliver my mail, tell me you love me, then be like, oh yeah, and I love Mans in the movie, and what about him, y'all still together? That's just like, girl, it's kind of giving how like right now Sinner's coming out, and you know everybody's like, girl, you did not go see a movie full of beautiful black people and you come out thirsting after the white man. Like, come on. But this woman was white, so I don't expect any better from her. Well, but you know what I'm saying. But also, like, you're delivering someone's mail. Like, keep it p for professional. Like, deliver the mail, move on. Don't. And if you're gonna give a compliment, give a true compliment. It just, I would be, so annoyed with her too. So she gets the materials. She looks at the stuff. She's like, cool, great, love it. She's about to fly to England. It's starting really rapidly. So what she doesn't see is that in that envelope, you can kind of see it right there. You can't. Let me see. Can you? Can I point? Y'all see that? That's the envelope right there. So in that envelope, it's the materials like the script, the movie, but it's also information on the Redream system. And what happens is when Issa opens the envelope, it falls out. So she doesn't get the information on the Redream. She doesn't know what's going on. She pulls up to the set where they're about to film. She just has no idea what's about to happen. Okay. And Nora is trying to brief her really quickly because they're already running behind on time. They have like 2 hours to shoot this. They said they will only need 90 minutes of her time, right? It's already trying to build this chaos. And so, they pretty much jump Brandy in. She puts the little mesmerizers on. Y'all know the things on Black Mirror. They put them on, and that's what sends you into the virtual space. And so she projects, and it's Dr. Alex Palmer. And she has a question that honestly I did too, where it was like, okay, so you're just gonna project a black woman back in the 1930s, and it's just supposed to be cool, and she's going on about her merry way? And the answer actually is yes, because of how this is working. It is a fictive, virtually generated environment based on this movie and all of the attendant surrounding materials. So it's really like self-contained to this movie. It doesn't have any other references to anything else, quote unquote, right? Because racism and anti-blackness is in everything. So it's not like they ever would have been able to, me in my opinion, to totally escape it. But for the sake of this argument, it's really just about this contained world in this movie. Almost, it's very much like if it isn't explicitly mentioned in the movie, it like doesn't exist. Just flat out. They're like, it just doesn't exist. Okay. So she's asking Nora, like, okay, so they're just gonna, I'm just supposed to be cool, and yeah, she's like, yeah, they'll just accept you as Dr. Alex Palmer. They'll see you as you, but that doesn't like matter, and Issa's like, and that's supposed to be fine. Nora's like, that's fine. They're like, that's fine. They're unsure, but it ends up being fine. Just so we're clear, everybody can relax your stomachs. It ends up being fine. So she's walking around. She's taking this role really as Dr. Alex Palmer, and the whole role of Dr. Alex Palmer is he is also supposed to. He's a doctor of tropical medicine, so he's doing that. But then they have this attraction building. But then there's this murder plot where her husband is trying to murder her. And so this scene, they transition. It's about the piano. That's literally the point of the scene. Is for Dr. Alex Palmer to play the piano. So she plays the piano. She doesn't know how to play the piano. No. Before she gets there, she doesn't know how to play the piano. They're talking, right? And Clara tells Dr. Alex Palmer, Issa Brandy, that her favorite song is Claire de Lune. Give what Claire de Lune mentioned, everybody. I just feel like since I have heard it in Twilight, it's like everywhere. And I know that's part of what makes these things famous and over time and stuff, but it's also like, dang, it be everywhere. So she's talking about how much she loves Claire de Lune, and this expressions right here, I just thought was so telling. It says it transports me to the gayest of places, and yet at the same time it's so sad, so full of yearning. And of course, I mean, lesbian yearning are the real yearners in the building. Like, I, I mean, I do think it has a bit of that quality. I can hear it more and more each time I hear it. And I just thought that was such an interesting choice of song, and you know, it, like description of it. You know what I mean? Of course, okay. So in the scene, Alex Palmer is supposed to play Claire de Lune actually, and that's supposed to what makes them, get closer. And Issa can't play the piano; she's messing it up bad. Yeah, it's going bad. So really, Clara is like, "Okay, girl, you're playing jokes. I don't appreciate this. I'm gonna leave." She walks away, And the whole point of this scene is that, they're trying to hit these story beats so that the story will finish appropriately, and then that way Brandy can exit the story. Um, but Clara is walking away, and so Brandy is trying to figure out how to get her to stop, and she does the only thing she can think of to call her Dorothy, right? And for me, now I would say, I don't know exactly what time this is supposed to take place in, but knowing in today's world what I know about virtual worlds, AI, and like altered reality states, it is never a good idea to let the program know that it's a program if it doesn't already know it's a program. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be the one to tell it it's not a real person, because then you're put in danger a little bit. Now, she's not put in danger again. Well, that's not true. She is put in danger. So she's put in danger. But to me, that's like the first rule of virtual reality is you have to try to keep your head on straight. You have to keep cool, because you cannot break with that virtual reality, because it could crash and it doesn't understand like what you're saying. You know what I'm saying? So she says Dorothy. Obviously, Clara slash Dorothy, it sparks something, and she's starting to connect with some memories here. So she's connecting with these memories. So right here, obviously, it's clear that Issa saying her name has sparked some memories. Um, she's like, okay, so why'd you call me Dorothy? And then Issa says, you remind me of someone. Said, okay, well, what's true of her is also true of me. It's like, she says, like, maybe she's someone who everyone thought had everything, but really she was sad. And I thought this connected to some fathomless sorrow reaching through time. Perhaps I was a tragic figure in some other life. I mean, she was hitting the nail on the head pretty much with what has happened to her and what in her existence in this fictive reality. And what happens is being called her name causes her to grow a dimension, and as they say, it's not really built to accommodate that. Now I thought that was really an interesting way. Is like, okay, grow dimension is to become more complex. Okay, and it's really saying it's not, this reality is not built for her to be more complex. Okay, this next scene where Dr. Palmer is supposed to invite herself onto this trip, Clara actually turns to her first and says, I don't suppose you would want to accompany me, would you, Dr. Palmer? And, she's like, well, I'm sorry, it's rather forward of me. And everyone at the control center is like, oh, she's gaining agency, And I thought, like, here's a really scene wrapping it up about how her connecting with her real essence and the truth of her life, even if she isn't as cognizant yet, she's connecting with those echoes, and that is expanding her consciousness to the point of her gaining agency and gaining this dimension of autonomy and action. She is not just being acted upon either. Part of her clear expression, clearly, seems that way. I think it's clear, but seems that part of what is important for her is to also be the one pursuing, to be the one acting, to be actively expressing desires, which I think is important for everyone. Whatever those desires are, I think it's important to express them actively, and in an actualized way. And this is what is happening to Clara slash Dorothy in this reality. So they go on this date, and it's these montage, and Issa's sick, and she's like, oh my goodness. And Clara says, I couldn't have asked for a more agreeable companion. And this was so interesting to me because, jump scare everybody, what's that? I thought this was so interesting because now anytime I hear this phrase, I'm going to think of Lestat. A handsome man with a most agreeable disposition. What a way to just classy, that's just so classy way of saying that you feeling someone and you're feeling their vibe. You know, he's a cutie with a vibe. So, I don't know if that was intentional or what. People watch shows. Interview with the Vampire is on Netflix right now. So, I just thought this was really interesting. And I mean, isn't the situation like the same? And this is a white paramour, you know, being so besotted with their black agreeable companion, you know, that I think honestly though in this, I feel like this one is a little more innocent, of course, right? Because the whole reason Lestat loved Louis from that first night was because he saw Louis pull a knife on his brother. This is just like they just had a nice day in Cairo in fictive movie land at the zoo and stuff. It was not, it was super cutie, you know? Um, but I thought the parallel was interesting nonetheless. So this next part is where things, you know, start to turn up. You know, the heat turns up because Clara twists her ankle, and because Dr. Alex Palmer is the doctor, this is where he's supposed to use his doctoring, and he touches her leg and all this stuff. But in this, of course, Dr. Alex Palmer is Issa. So Issa is the one doing all of the lightly suggestive touching of the ankle and of the knee and examining the bruise and all this stuff. And you know, they share these really heated glances back and forth. You know, they're very, what's the word, I don't want to say like cautious. Cautious is a good word, but that's not exactly the word I'm looking for. But they're not, it's not quite apprehensive, but I mean they are clearly to me surprised by like the strength of what they're feeling, in my opinion, that it's so real for them right now. um and even Clara's like, maybe you want to try a little higher to make sure you got it all, you know, you want to, you know what I'm saying. And so Issa does. Okay, she's look at them, they're rolling down her stocking, look at all that, like it's getting real in there, you know, it's getting heated. And this one was so funny because she literally says a tad fruitier than the original, which I was like, girl, you're so funny because you're so right. I'm sitting here like, girl, this is gay. And I love it. You know, clearly she's like taken by this redo of the movie, honestly. She's so funny. Um and so then in the scene, right, someone comes to the door with the ice and interrupts the moment and all this stuff. And I mean, look at how high her hand was up there on her leg. Like, that was crazy. Um, boop. Jump. You know, so they have this whole moment. Look at how high that is. Okay, they have this whole moment. Um, and you know, then the ice comes for the champagne, and this is where the second murder attempt happens with the scorpion, and Dr. Alex Palmer manages to trap the scorpion and saves Clara, and it's all so romantic. And so, you know, naturally the attraction rises. I mean, it peaks pretty much, it's off the charts, and then we get this, the music swells, you know. I was like, whoa, I was surprised. I almost thought they weren't gonna go there, but they went there. um and you know, they really get into it. So I was just like, I was loving that, honestly. Like, I was speechless. I'm clearly speechless right now, like speechless. So um and here's where it's so important, right? um the moment is peaking, and because of that, the guy knocks his coffee over and it spills onto the computer, and everything in the outside crashes. So really it's just Issa in this world, and they have this really poignant shift in the, like, I don't know if you can tell, right? Like, it has that old movie look to it right here, but then right here when they go forward, it's more, it looks more contemporary. It's just black and white. It's not necessarily with the 30s like bloom, you know what I mean? Soften the edges and things like that. Like, this is more real contemporary filmmaking style. And Clara literally feels it. She says, I feel as if the whole world has somehow stopped turning, which I mean, it has. Like, but it's true that their kiss is what caused the world to stop turning. So hence, lesbians breaking the time space continuum. I mean, all of these changes had amounted to so, it's like everything everywhere all at once, except to me they're living their best life, where they've made all of these deviations that at first seemed really left and perhaps wrong, but they have led to this moment that was so emotionally charged that it literally, caused this whole break. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, hey, I think we all hope to have a love that strong, or feelings, or I mean, you have, and you know what it's like, you know. I just thought that was so interesting. So, naturally, Issa starts freaking out. She's like, "Girl, where's everybody? Where's Kimmy? I can't hear them. What's going on?" Like, she's freaking out bad, and it's understandable because, she's trapped in there. She doesn't really know, but I also know that, again, telling the fictive world that it's a fictive world is like number one on the list of no nos. Don't you do it. Like, for real, don't even do it. I don't care how upset, I don't care how, like, you gotta try to keep your cool, because and in this case I do think it works out well. Again, let me reiterate that, but not in every case will it go well. And I was scared for her. You never know with Black Mirror. I was scared for her. So she's getting fed up. Clara's like, "Girl, I don't know what's going on. I don't understand. What are you talking about?" Alex Palmer. Brandy's like, "Girl, this is fake. I'm not Dr. Alex Palmer. This whole world's a movie." She literally goes so far and is like, "You're a performance." And this whole little monologue right before she oh, and that, because I meant to say, when they were actually in the room, when they back here, really, like here, Clara says that she yearns to be free. Um, because she was talking about like the social expectations, and what would it mean if people saw her drinking champagne in her room with a stranger. She's just like, "I yearn to be free." It's a lot of yearning for freedom in here. So by the time we get here, um Brandy really, I think it was, and Brandy was freaking out, so it was a little hurtful. I think, of course, she wanted to. She's frustrated and fed up, and that's fair. But she literally has this conversation with Claire about, like, okay, this whole world is fake. Look around you; it's not even in color. And Claire's like, "I don't get it. What do you mean?" And Brandy proceeds to, like, "Okay, look at this banana. Do you see a color? It's not yellow. You see an orange? It's not orange. You see this apple? What color is it?" And Clara, which I thought was funny as a response, was like, "The same color an apple always is." And Randy's like, "No, girl, is this red or green?" And Clara can't answer that. Brandy's like, "Okay, what about your dad? What does he look like? Do you have any memories of your childhood? Like, do you know anything about yourself beyond what is happening right now?" And I thought that was really interesting in a sense because, right, this episode is about women struggling with their sexuality in a world that is can be really cruel and harsh on those who have identities that challenge traditional structures. I'll say that. And I thought the question of realness being tied to memory, of course, is interesting naturally. I mean, I know Issa is half Senegalese, but just in general for Black people, memory, especially African American people, memory is such a, it's really emotionally laden topic. Let alone those amongst our number who experience other trials of identity. And one thing I've heard about trauma, and I've heard a lot, and a lot of people know this, is that trauma can steal your memories, can steal your childhood, can steal just periods of your life. Trauma, or whatever resulting states you may find yourself in. And I just thought the tying of whether or not Clara was real to her memories, I'm not sure what I make of it. Like I said, it's very complex topic. Of course, this is a fictive person, so no, she doesn't have memories. But does that mean she's not real? Does that mean she doesn't exist? Like, you can clearly touch her and see her. So does she need those things to be real? Um, and then it kind of climaxes in this point with Issa saying, Brandy saying, "You're a performance. You're a character. You're a character that Dorothy Chambers played. You're not real." And naturally, this upsets Clara. She's like, "What do you mean?" She's trying to figure all this out, and she's really sullen. And they're on the outside. They're trying to fix it, and they're scrambling, and they take this time, Brandy and Clara, and Clara's really sitting and she's really thinking. And Brandy goes to her, she's apologizing, and she says, "I'm sorry. I said you're not real, but I'm also kind of not either, because really, she's playing Dr. Alex Palmer." But I also thought this meant, to me, I felt like this was deeper than just the movie. I think she was also alluding to her real life in a way, just the way that she admitted it and the sentimentality. And she doesn't say it and she doesn't go into it, but when she first said this line, I actually thought she was going to talk more about how she was like pretending in her real life. But she really just said, "Oh, I'm like Doctor. I'm not Alex Palmer. I'm Brandy Friday," which is fair, But like, well, girl, you're in for a penny, in for a pound. You might as well tell her about the rest of your life too. But hey, she doesn't. She apologizes though. She walks away. Clara takes some more time to think. And then the next day, Clara wakes up with a renewed purpose to find a way out. Actually, this revelation has caused her to gain so much agency. She's like, "Well, actually, I'm finna figure out how to leave. I'm not gonna be stuck in here forever." And she actually tells Brandy that Brandy can't go with her. Like, Clara has to go on her own, which is very important. You have to go on those journeys by yourself, honestly. Um, and honestly, leaving means something different for Brandy than it does for Clara, obviously. And I've been scared. If Brandy had attempted to breach the fringe, well, she couldn't, obviously, I think, because Brandy says to Clara, "Oh, I tried to go in the other rooms, but it's nothing there because they're not part of the movie." So she actually can't enter those spaces, really, because she's technically not a part of this world. She's being projected in, but she's not a part of it. But Clara being a part of it, she can step through the world and enter this virtual void space, which, of course, I mean, a void space as the psyche and as the abyss of our emotions and all that good, deep Jungian psychoanalysis stuff. She's literally in a pitch black abyss, you know, um, very chthonic of her. And she, by tapping into this void space, she's actually able to connect with the information that was put into the program to make it, which they said were the dailies, everything from the set and the news and all this stuff, right? So we actually see real Dorothy Chambers. So I guess she does get her Technicolor moment. We do see her in color in her time. And she's reading her lines, and we see her make eye contact with this crew woman over here. And they making eyes at each other. And look at her. She's watching, and she's smiling, and she's laughing. We see she's really happy here. So we're like, what's going on, right? Because we already know Dorothy Chambers is pre-dead in the contemporary timeline where Brandy Friday is. And really, I didn't want to show because it was just like the man and her being sad, but really what has gone on is that she clearly had affections for this woman. They had affections for each other, but because Dorothy was an actress and, was in this movie, this romance, and, the Hollywood culture, she pretty much pretended to be in this weird relationship with the co-star and was really unhappy. And as you can see, she's having this weird relationship. She's really unhappy, really. And if you've noticed, just look at how she's smiling here. Okay. Like they're obviously having eyes for each other. And like I said, I didn't put that man in because I didn't really want to. I didn't feel like he was important enough to put in. But, in this scene, like she's smiling, they're talking, and then he walks in and Dorothy face falls and the woman walks away. She just like shadow floats away almost. And you just immediately understand what's happening here. Um, and then they show this montage, they end the montage really with these clips of her in her house, and she's walking around. It's really solemn. She's getting her drink. She's putting on her record. And I thought this was really interesting to give her these shots because they remind me of the shots of Issa from the beginning. Can I go back? Is there a way I could go back to the beginning but like cute? You can't see anything when you're performing. So I thought it was really interesting that as they're showing this montage of Dorothy in her house, she's obviously very melancholic. It's very sad. They show these shots of her looking out of her window very solemnly. And I think that you see that, she has the same look of contemplation on her face. But then this one, to me, she looks way more ready. She looks at peace. And really, I'm supposed she's at peace with what she was about to do, which was to take her sleeping pills and mix that drink and, kind of end it all. And so we end with Dorothy Chambers is dead. So, this is all incredibly destabilizing for Clara because Clara slash Dorothy in the movie, because she's just learning that this existence is not real per se. That this is a projection of a movie of a character that she played, and then finding out that in the real world that she is pre-gone, so she doesn't even have, oh, maybe I lived a fulfilling life, or maybe I actually overcame, or, whatever that she might have been thinking and hoping. And honestly, that I think we all might have hoped for her that she would live a good life. And she didn't. Her life ended right there where honestly the world left her looking crazy at. And so this is just, I think it's destabilizing for her, but somehow it gives her a renewed sense of purpose. So she walks out of this fringe space. She walks back into the hotel where Issa slash Brandy is waiting, kind of playing, messing around on the piano. And Dorothy is like, okay, well, I'm not going to let you defile this piano any longer. And so Dorothy actually sits down at the piano and plays, and you guessed it, Claire de Lune, which sounds really beautiful, honestly. I can't say that I've ever just like heard it, but I think it was a very appropriate choice for this episode and for this story that they are telling. And if you notice, then Issa comes over and puts her hand on Clara's neck. And look at that. That's so intimate right there. And the intimacy of this actually reminded me again of Interview with a Vampire because, if you've watched the show or you know anything about it, Lestat is super into Louis, right? And he just loves him some Louis, can't get enough. You know what I mean? And I think there's this motif. Can y'all see that? I don't know how to make it bigger on the computer, but if you could see that there's these moments where Lestat is reaching out to touch Louis. And of course, this one right here on the right, it's this black and white photograph of all three, Claudia, Louis, and Lestat. They're sitting down. That's like a promo photo, but I mean, look at it. It's gorgeous. It's real. But as you can see, this first still of Lestat reaching out to touch Louis and not making contact is actually the first episode. So this is before they've actually before Louis becomes a vampire, before he actually knows what Lestat is. So there is actually no connection. And if you can then take the hand actually connecting and laying on the shoulder, on the back of the neck, or wherever, as, you know, to me, I say an honesty of connection, then you can see how this moment with Clara and Brandy is very important. It means that they're both looking at each other with real eyes. Okay, real eyes realize real lies. You know what I mean? Like they're seeing beyond the what Claire calls it a meaningless pantomime, and they are able to connect with the true essence of each other, and therefore to me lends itself to Brandy actually connecting and touching the back of Clara's neck. I mean, your that's the base of your brain and your spine, and it's very important stuff going on right there. You can really only let someone you trust touch you right there. I know I would. It's not like a stranger is getting ready to touch the back of my neck. I'm not having that. So I think it's very poignant the way that the direction and the body language in this episode, and really to me the callback, these are really easy callbacks that didn't take a lot of like, well, I be using fandom, so I can't say that, but you know, I will say this was a very interesting parallel. And then, I mean, it just shows them getting up into all kinds of shenanigans because really they're stuck in this virtual world. The time is going by faster for them than it is going by for the people outside. The people outside are still constrained in this hour, 2 hours that they have had to shoot this. But for Brandy and for Clara, it's like 2 months that goes by. I think they said like 6 or 7 hours go by in 1 second. Like, can you imagine how like destabilizing that is, as just the temporal force of hours going by in 1 second and months going by, and it's only been like 30, 40, 50 minutes maybe on the outside world, that they have experienced an exponential amount of just like things, experiences, growth, and I would say in a way like resolution. They're really being able to work out their issues in this virtual space going at rapid speed. Um, and that's also what I mean about lesbians breaking the time space continuum, because in a way this reminds me of perhaps growing up that with different identities that are not necessarily supported or respected. I mean, that's like at best, right? By mainstream society, it requires you to grow up really fast. Just different traumas and things like that. It just requires you to go through an exponential amount of growth, of character exploration, of identity actualization. I mean, that's not to say just because of of having these identities that you're going to be super self-aware and all this other stuff, but it does give you a it's a comfortability you have to get with being able to interrogate yourself in the context of the world, and we don't always get to do that at the world's time, quote unquote, or anybody else's time. Sometimes it happens really fast. Sometimes it happens really slow too, but more often than not, if it seems there's a lot of people for whom these experiences made them have to reckon with themselves a lot quicker, in both in the sense of younger and the time it takes to do that work. So I thought that was a really interesting parallel there. But they're having a lot of fun. They're running through, they're making drinks, they're eating the food, they're just doing whatever they want to do. And obviously, they're getting to the point, right, where they are going to be intimate. And I thought this was really lovely because, of course, at some point, like Clara has to strip down. They have to, like, take their clothes off. They don't really address, like, what Issa's bodily needs are per se in this, but I mean, obviously they're drinking drinks, they're eating food, they're kissing. Like, there is a very, very real element to everything that's going on, a very tangible element. So they get this scene, right, and they're approaching, they're about to kiss, and right before they kiss, they show this really nice scene of this water. I don't know, I just really liked it. I just really like it. I don't know, this black and white of the pool, where they're laying, and then it actually does cut to them kissing, and like they're rolling around on the bed. It's like this is fully interactive. Okay, there is no uh, there's like there's no artifice almost to it in a way. Like they're touching, they're breathing, it's flesh. um And I think that's incredible. Of course, this is all like Issa's consciousness, but there's still a very real element, you know, just because it's a consciousness doesn't mean that she's not real or tangible. So again, just some shots of them lounging, they're sleeping. Clara's obviously in love. Look at her hand here. She's feeling very intimate. They're touching hands. You know, it gives a lot of ebony and ivory. I mean, it's literally in black and white, you know, but this is the one time where it was it was almost played so straight. It truly didn't matter actually. Like there's no one to judge them. There's no forces necessarily to impact Issa. There's no like danger for her for being with this white woman, as we know at that time, and I would dare say now. So y'all, yeah, y'all better stay aware, stay woke, okay? But there's no danger for Issa having this intimate relationship with this woman, and there's no danger for Clara either having a relationship with a woman, black or not. I mean, of course, if she had been black back then, that would have been like that might have made the world implode back then. It might maybe not the world, but definitely like I don't know who was the president, Franklin D. Roosevelt or somebody. It would have made their head explode. But you know, just it being a woman, you know, and her being able to express those desires and really realizing and seeing that this is in fact a woman is not just a cardboard cutout of Alex Palmer that you know that has no identity. It's someone with an identity that she is into and that she likes. So I think that is really important. And so the time is passing, right? And like I say, for them, it's been 2 months. For the people in the back, it's been like that same hour and a half, 2 hours. And you know, Issa's lying here with Clara, and you know, you can tell she feels melancholy again, and she's wondering, and she looks at Clara, and she's like, "Do you think you love me just because you're written to love Dr. Alex Palmer? Like, do you think that's the only reason why you like me?" And this moment was so like I could cry right now. I don't even know. It's just like, and but Clara's like, "Well, girl, but you're not Alex Palmer," which is the whole point, you know. And it was just a lovely moment of reassurance that both of them are really seeing each other as they are, as much as they can in this reality. And I don't know, it was just really important, I think, to see that whoever Brandy came in as, Clara knows that she's not that person, and they have been able to see each other just without any of that external artifice. So, you know, I almost want to say that this place like completely, I don't want to say negates because that has such a negative connotation, but in a way, like once Dorothy finds out she's Dorothy and finds out Brandy is Brandy, they never necessarily call each other by those names. And I think throughout the whole episode, it's also Clara Rice LaChere and Dr. Alex Palmer. Like they say these names a lot, but when they actually get to the point where they have uncovered and revealed themselves to each other, they actually don't even use names, which I think is relatable. I mean, of course, you can have pet names for someone, but typically with the people I care about, I don't typically tend to say their name a lot, really. Um, Especially in this world where they really only have each other to interact with, and you know, it's almost like no need. They don't have to name themselves or each other for others. They can really just exist. This is like truly as close to loving someone in a vacuum as you could probably get in a scenario, you know, where like the names and the actual life doesn't matter and all these things are actually don't necessarily play into the relationship per se. We're all constructed of these things and we take them wherever we go, but sometimes things are way less adulterated than we may think, and I think these are one of the cases. So but it is at this moment where Clara realizes, or they both laying together, and she says, "You're not Alex Palmer." They actually get the sound going back in the outside world, which is really important. Okay, so this moment when they actually after Clara says, "But you're not Alex Palmer," and there is this understanding that they're seeing each other as they are, this is when the people in the outside world finally get the tech back up and running, and Issa can hear them in her ear. And I think if you'll notice again how they do the cinematography, to me, it's like when they are just with each other and the outside, they're cut off from the outside world, it gives this very real sort of cinematography. But then when the production picks back up, you see it gets that 1930s kind of like glow to it again, that haziness. So right now they're back in this constructed world. The performance is back on. It's showtime. And so really right now, what's about to happen is that they're resetting the world. So it's actually going to reset back to the point where Issa traps the scorpion and they're about to kiss for the first time. And Clara doesn't remember any of this. So Brandy is going to go forward, and she is the only one who remembers these last 2 months that they've spent together. So there's a whole bunch of like convoluted, and they're trying to fix the script and they're trying to fix the plot line. So I won't like bedraggle that or anything. I won't do too much on that, because it was like, okay, girl, these plot points. This is, I guess, why I'm not a story writer, because I'm not the one for all of these little minute details like that. Well, that's not true, but not in that way. But once they're back and they reset, it's obvious Brandy is having a hard time, right? She's just experienced all of this really deep, really soul shifting, transformative growth in this short amount of time. And now she's with this person who doesn't remember any of it. She's the only one who remembers. She's actually the only one who even knows what happens at this point, which, I mean, again, feels very familiar to me. I don't know about anybody else, but just having those experiences that that only you saw, it's not really, I won't say it's worthless or pointless to try to explain to anyone else, but it's very much, you had to be there to get it. And she's holding all of this within her. And so she's running around, they're trying to make the plot points work, and it's supposed to happen so that the inspector who originally pointing the gun at Dr. Alex Palmer ends up killing the husband, I think. And, then Dr. Alex Palmer and Clara get to ride off into the sunset, happily ever after. Okay, but I think we all know this is probably not how it's going to go for these two, because the story has already been so irrevocably changed. They have to riff, on it and try to make it work. So they end up at the end, and really it seems like they're in a corner. They don't really know how to make the storyline shake so that everybody makes it out, and so that Brandy gets to say her line and all these things. And it seems that, to me, like, Clara remembers a lot more than maybe they've shown her to remember, or maybe, that we're let in on, because of course this is the production part. So this is not necessarily about being in touch with their realities. This is about these roles in this movie. So we don't actually know what Clara is thinking, because that was not part of the movie. But we do see her again taking agency. Look at her. She's tearfully embracing Issa. Says, "Forgive me." What's to be forgiven for, you ask? She says, "I love you." Issa says, "I love you too." And this is where we then get the story. We get this one last kiss. One last kiss. Not a Judas kiss, though. This is not a kiss of betrayal. This is a kiss of sacrifice, in fact. And so I didn't show it because I don't like to show the girls getting shot, and I probably couldn't show it anywhere anyway. But basically what happens is this last standoff happens, and they're trying to figure it out, and nobody can quite crack it, and everybody's really worried because Brandy has to say this line so she can get out. There's no other way. They cannot just eject her. If they try to eject her, they could kill her for real. She could just be trapped in this movie. Her body would die. Like, it's all of these stakes. So Clara / Dorothy takes it upon herself to rewrite the ending, right? Which is where you get this apology, forgive me. If you've seen any movies, you know probably what she's about to do. She takes the gun, she points it at the inspector, she kills the inspector, completely from left field. And then they shoot her. The responding police force shoots her. She dies. That's the end of the story. And, she literally tells Issa, like, don't be sad for me. Don't cry for me. This is like what I wanted. It's okay. Just remember me, and, um, this is where, I mean, look at her face. She's torn up. And I understand, and she gives the final line, I'll be yours forevermore. The credits roll, and then she comes out of it. Look at her. And I'll say, on my part, for me, um, I think Issa is a really good actress. This is some of the most emotionally moving work for me that I've ever seen her do. And of course, I mean, I have a personal interest in the story, but still, I think it was because Insecure is about growing up. That's more of coming of age. But this is a person who's grown up. And although she still had more growing to do, this wasn't for laughs, you know? I won't say nothing was funny, but this wasn't for laughs. This was very serious. Um, and the stakes were very serious. So she's really cut up. She says the final lines. The credits roll. She comes out. If you look at her face, listen, she wakes up, big fat tears still rolling. Okay, the tears roll down to my ears, y'all. This is what Beyonce meant. Okay, she sits up. You can see them fall down her face. These are big. She literally woke up crying. I woke up crying before. It's a very trippy experience to be feeling something so strong in like a disembodied sort of conscious state that when you wake back up, your body is already with the program. It is continuing that train of action, and she's crying. I'm sure none of them even get it because they don't know what's happened. They haven't seen, they haven't heard anything. Um, and the movie goes off without a hitch. We come to Issa at the end, right? Now, they show a couple shots of her. She's riding around. She still looks very sullen. The movie's out. It's doing well. Everybody loves it. But obviously, she's mourning. She's seeing this beautiful face that she's seen. I'm saying what she probably thinks. I'm not saying Emma's ugly. I'm just editorializing from Issa's point of view that she's just seeing his face all over the place, and she has to keep remembering what has happened, and she's the only one who knows. She's the only one who knows at this point officially. Actual Dorothy's been dead, been lived and died before any of us was even thought about. The virtual Dorothy that's gone. The movie's already out. Like, even the Dorothy that she had in the movie didn't technically remember what had happened. So for Issa right now, she's in this state of remembrance alone. And I thought it was really interesting because at the beginning of the episode, if you'll remember, she had a bun, she had a ponytail, she had the straight, with a part on the side, and pants, which I don't know. I don't want to say I don't know, but I think it's very interesting that after she takes this romp into this 1930s movie, she comes back out. She's got her hair curl, she's got this bang, she's got this red dress on. She looks very different from how she looked in the beginning. Not necessarily emotionally, but just physically in terms of like her style and her dress, which I mean, I interpret to mean is that even though she's sad, she's much more in touch with her emotions, with herself. If we look at the color difference of the green versus the red, I mean, I always jump to chakras. Red is the root, green is the heart. Obviously at the beginning, she's really yearning for something. She's really yearning for romance, for adventure, for something timeless. She's really yearning for something really deep. And I would say that yearning, part of it was for just her true self. And then so when she comes out and now she's in this red, I mean, it's a more provocative color. It's related to the root, center, your base, your stability. I would say your identity. Maybe she's feeling more secure in who she is, in the sort of things that she wants. And she has had this experience of loving someone and having something really magical. Um, and it has transformed her. Maybe it's given her a sense of security and maybe passion that she has never experienced, or is new to experiencing. And I'm even thinking about looking like when you're recording stuff, right? When things are green, it's all good. When it gets to red, it's overload. And I can't say that I feel like those necessarily track in this case, but I still think it's very interesting. I mean, red and green have a lot of symbolism in our culture. Red light, green light, those sorts of things. But I think in this instance, it's more related to just like her passion and being in touch with her identity and her desires and her emotional drive. Ultimately, at the end of the day. So as we wrap up the episode, she gets in her house. She actually receives a package from Kimmy, which is Nora, which is the Redream lady, and said, "Hey, we had them whip you up something special." So she's able to plug in this phone in this machine into the computer, and then it actually calls Dorothy in her reel. So if you remember at the beginning, they had this screen test that she was doing where she was talking on the phone, and she was like, "Oh, but there's nobody on the other line. It's just so hard to act if there's nobody on the other line." And this time, somebody is on the other line, a friend. So when Issa calls, Clara slash Dorothy is like, "Wow, well, who's this? You know, who are you?" And Issa's like, "Well, I'm a friend." And she's like, "Well, do I know you?" She's like, "Well, yes and no. It's a long story. How much time do you have?" And Dorothy says, "Since you got a kind voice, I've got all the time in the world." And she smiles, and we fade to black, right? So, you know, like I said, there were a lot of themes in this episode. Um, there were a lot of themes in this episode. Okay, so just going back to these points that I had drawn on earlier, to kind of just bring it back around and close the loop on everything. Um, as we can see, right, they were both yearning for gender freedom. And, Issa got that by playing a traditionally male role as the romantic lead. But what I will say that I thought was very smart, very interesting, something that I love and really relatable to me is that to me, neither one of them necessarily, quote unquote, took the lead, right? There's a lot of static identity implied sometimes, girl. That's the whole point of gender roles, is to give you a static box of identity, little words to go in there, behaviors and identities and dress and all these other things. It's meant to be static. They're meant to stay the same, and they're meant to be a container to give people an ease of interacting with each other and the world. And I'm not someone who's against all labels, all labelless society. I don't think that's like per se real, and I don't think it's helpful. But I also don't think prescriptive identities are helpful either, or roles. And I do know that there is a lot implied, said explicitly, implicitly, in being considered as taking the lead in a romantic situation. Even just dropping the associations with masculinity, if I could ever do that. There is this idea that if you're leading, you're always leading. If you're following, you're always following, or you're always being pursued. There is not necessarily a give and take, a back and forth in that exchange. There is no fluidity or flexibility. But with Dorothy and Brandy, to me, they both made efforts in taking the lead and being active in their desires. Of course, Brandy, just by wanting to be the romantic lead in a role that was traditionally male, then her unconventionality to the time period, giving Clara agency in unlocking those dimensions for her. And then we see, as soon as her dimensions were unlocked, she was actually quite an active pursuant as well. She invited Dr. Alex Palmer out on the sighting, and just really was even when she twisted her ankle and um Brandy is like looking at her leg and all that stuff, is she Clara was literally like, don't you think maybe you should try higher to see if it's tender? And then, and she's like, oh, it's ever so tender, like she, by the I won't say by the end, but throughout this process we could see that she begins to take it upon herself to enact her desires on the world around her. Um, Even after that moment, her desire to figure out how to escape, she does that on her own. She wakes up with a renewed purpose. She goes and she does it on her own. She finds out a lot. She comes back. She still has renewed purpose. Now she's playing the piano. She's not waiting for anyone to play the piano. She knows how to play Claire de Lune. She's finna play it. She want to hear it. Cool. You know, um, if you like to hear it, here it go. Like she just does not sit and wait for things to happen to her. Once she's aware and she's really understanding like what's going on, that gives her all of the fuel that she needs to just be active in her own life and be an active, not participant, but like a leader, you know? Um, and I think it's sad. I'm a little ambivalent because Black Mirror knows they love them a tragic lesbian tale. My goodness. I think San Junipero was like not necessarily as tragic, but they do love some very ambivalent, bittersweet. And I will say it is bittersweet because, because she was pre-dead, she felt like her best option in this scenario was to also die in the movie. And I can't blame her and say that she's wrong. I would, she obviously, like her unhappiness, they said that the people behind the technology, when they were running the production, said, well, she put as much of her life into the Clara role. So she is sensing the echoes of her life throughout this role, meaning that she felt the discontent. She felt those closeted emotions. She felt the melancholy at, not being able to express herself and her identity the way that would have made her fulfilled. She felt, I'm sure, the disgust that we felt trying to interact with someone that you really don't like and you really have no affection for. So, um, yeah, I mean, I just think that the mix of it all, like, I do think it's a better ending because I was kind of expecting Brandy to die and to stay into the simulation, but that also wouldn't have been good either for a Black woman to just die in the real world. So I do think they chose probably the best path out of this, but at the same time it's still sad, because this is a identity, this is a person, this is a moment that's truly trapped in that time that only Issa will ever know. Honestly, we don't know what will happen when she talks to Dorothy on the phone that's left up to us. I don't know, but I think all of this just, again, with the last point alluding to the performative nature of gender desire and then the construction of those desires around those genders, because once everything fell away, there was no there were no harsh boundaries of identity and of action of expression and or just even of gender. You know what I mean? Like I said, I think it's very interesting that at the beginning of the episode, up until pretty much the literal last shot, Issa's in pants the whole time, and then the last shot she's in a dress. And I mean, back then, especially in the 30s and stuff, girls couldn't really, like, wearing pants really wasn't a thing women did. So I think it's interesting that how she was feeling in her life before the movie led her to wanting to play a romantic lead, a traditionally male role with her pants on. And then she goes through this really transformative experience and she comes out and she's wearing this red dress. And, perhaps that is about the liberation of understanding about just she doesn't necessarily have to wear pants and be the traditional male lead to be taking an active, expressive lead in her own life. Um, yeah, it maybe just decolonized her mind about it a little bit. Maybe she was super tomboy, and this is a way to sort of reassert herself and reassert her ability to be assertive and to be active. And after this experience, she doesn't necessarily feel the need to have those trappings in order to express herself that way, which I think is very important, because at the end of the day, then these relationship is a femme for femme relationship. And I think a lot of times people see two femmes together, which I will argue, are you seeing two femmes together, or are you seeing two feminine women together? Because those are two different things, and I am not going to elucidate the difference here. If you know, you know already. Maybe another time, but this time ain't the time probably. But two femmes who are actually tapped in with each other, who are actually connected. People feel like two femmes is a male fantasy, but the truth of the matter is, when it is two femmes, two lesbian femmes together, right? There was nobody else in that movie. This is not about anybody else. There was no gaze to be gazing upon what they had going on. When people actually see two femmes who are locked into each other and not for male gaze, first of all, they don't actually even comprehend that that exists. But then when they see it, I feel like people kind of flip their wig a little bit. They're not used to seeing it, and they're uncomfortable, I feel like, sometimes with the implications of two femmes being able to go back and forth between being the pursuer and being pursued. There is always this moving dance where nothing is assumed based on your gender, because in a way you share, it's a similar gender, same gender loving as two femmes. um yeah, I mean, I don't know necessarily where else to go with that without breaking down the differences between feminine women, just like femmes. But, and I know even for some people, femme means something else, but listen, femme for femme exists. It's always existed. Lipstick femme for lipstick femme. There's just always been a pocket of women who desire each other, who were both femmes. That's just always existed. And of course, there are social codes that dictated women's dress throughout time, and all this stuff. And like I said, the wearing pants wasn't allowed. It was literally illegal back then. You could go to jail. Hence, like the Stonewall riots and all these sorts of things. But I don't know. I just thought it was really telling that after Issa had really wanted to be super active, and that was how she saw herself being romantic, and that's what she felt like romance was, and all this other stuff, she comes out of it like wearing a dress with her curly hair and her bayang. And of course Dorothy was in her dress the whole time, and we never know what her life could have been, or what she might have wanted to express herself as had she been able to do that, or even if she had you know stayed alive. Just no judgment there, but to me it just shows that sometimes what you think, I don't know. I don't even know how to wrap it up in a pithy way. I don't even know if it can be, because it's so expansive. I just am glad to see that representation. I know people feel like, oh, femme for femmes everywhere. Show me where it's not. But to me personally, femme for femme is not everywhere. Let's start there. And even though this is a show, this episode was about interracial pairing, even just showing two black femmes together, you've never seen really something with that was not an actual ploy for attention for men. It was not some sort of, oh, we freaky, we just doing stuff. It's two girls, we just doing stuff, kissing in the back seat. Like, no. This was a really serious relationship between two women that had nothing to do with anybody else. And we don't get a lot of that. And no, the L word doesn't count. I said what I said. Whatever else y'all about to say counts, don't count. At the end of the day, especially for Issa, two black femmes existing, choosing each other, loving each other. Shout out to The Color Purple. Like, that makes people really uncomfortable and really upset. So, I don't know. I'm not going to get off my soapbox. But I think this was a fantastic episode. Probably
I might go so far as to say their best episode, and I don't think I'm doing too much on it because I mean a lot of other stories. I would say the episode with Letitia Wright gets a close second. I don't feel like enough fanfare was done on that one. I think people were really uncomfortable about the implications of that one too, about the surveillance state and the state of watching violence and becoming perpetrators of that violence. Yeah, people weren't ready for it. I think they might be ready now, but they weren't ready back then. And of course, like the first episode with the pig and the prime minister and all that stuff. But I would say this one is definitely one of the top episodes for me because it was just so thoughtful and just really integrated in a way with real life. Like it told the line how Black Mirror does of parody and social commentary, but they actually stayed really sharp. It was on that razor's edge, but it managed to stay really sharp without towing into pantomime completely or like goofy parody, you know what I'm saying? Like I kind of feel like the first episode with like the river mind and the comedy and like that was super de duper on the nose, which hey, that's kind of what Black Mirror is, but this one was so like beyond the nose. This one wasn't on the nose, it was beyond the nose. I loved it. Please more. And to me, the chemistry between Issa and Emma Corwin was actually so amazing. I really believed them and I really bought them. I'm invested. I was invested in their relationship and their happiness. And I don't even be invested all the time in no offense to nobody, but I'm here for black love. You know what I'm saying? So they had me invested in a story that I typically wouldn't even be invested in. Um, they just really sold it. I feel like Issa really went for it. I don't I didn't feel like super a lot of like hesitation on her part, like as a meta level actress, as like Issa being Brandy, being Dr. Palmer. I did not feel the hesitation there, and I think Emma Corwin was fantastic as Clara and Dorothy. Um, yeah, this was amazing, and I would love to hear more about it. I would love to hear if you watched it, what you thought about it, any other points that you might have taken from it, and just anything that came up for you during this episode and this corresponding chat. I just want to thank you for listening. This has been a joy to talk about. I've been so excited to talk about it, and I had such a good time going over it. And just hoping for more storytelling like this in the present and near future, honestly. So thank you. Hope you have a wonderful day wherever you're at, night, evening, whatever time period. Just a wonderful life. Okay, we're not stopping at one day. I hope you have a wonderful life if you deserve it. I don't know you, I don't know your life, but I hope you have a wonderful life, a wonderful time. Hope you join me again for the next chat. This has been Jair, also known as Black Fairy, at Library Nocturne, and I will chat with you soon. Ciao.